Hello and welcome back to another episode of the There Is a Floodlight That Never Goes Out podcast. As always, I'm joined by Ed and Will, and I'm delighted to say that we are joined by one of my footballing heroes, Brian Howard, today. How are you, Brian?
Hope you're all well, guys.
Yeah,
Yeah,
all
we
good,
are.
thank you.
Very good, thank you.
So I think we're going to start from the beginning here. Of how did your career start? Because you had a spell at Southampton without actually making a league appearance. So how was that?
It was, I joined them as a 10-year-old. Got scouted for the academy. Used to be at the old Dell then. Used to train at the Dell. It was actually on TV the other week. I don't know if you guys saw it. When they done the Bob Higgins thing and that about some of the horrible stories in football. But
Yeah.
gym, we used to train in there. So I was a 10-year-old, and then when they done up the training ground over at Marchwood, joined up there. I was doing particularly well. I was in the England youth setup, and they offered me straight away at kind of 15, 16. So signed there, and then just like I said, there wasn't really that pathway for me. I was in and around the first team, training with the first team all the time, but just never kind of got that breakthrough. And I got to 19, 20 years old, and they got to the FA Cup final that year against Arsenal and finished seventh in the Premier League, and it was just right. I'm not gonna get City.
Yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned there you were in the England youth setup. I mean, what was that like in the early 2000s?
It was incredible. I remember playing in the Victory Shield in 1999. Obviously many years ago for a lot of people listening. To get experience playing live on TV as a schoolboy, and playing with some really good players and against some good players, and we managed to then play at the old Wembley that summer. Played against Argentina, and I lucky to score a goal at Wembley, and Carlos Tevez scored for them, and I think Michael Chopra scored the other. So there's some good names playing in that game.
I mean,
Yeah.
you said about obviously being a young lad, being around the Southampton first team and stuff. There must have been some players. I mean, were you at Southampton when the likes of Matt Letizia were there?
Yep. So know Tiz really well. Still play side by side with a lot of those boys now. And obviously I live back down in the area, so
Yeah.
still see a lot of Tiz, and people like James Beattie, Marion Pajas. They had some squad, and
Yeah.
a lot of players that were kind of ending their career were coming. Lots of Andrei Kanchelskis, Mark Hughes, Mark Draper, Roy Delap was there at the time, Anders Svensson, Joe Tessum, like some fantastic pros to learn off, and all brilliant people as well.
Yeah. So yeah, sort of moving on from your time at the Saints. It sort of said you said in the Under the Cosh podcast that you trained with Chelsea. I mean, how close did you get to signing a contract with them?
Really close, yeah. There was a young player called Joe Keenan who was got involved in that England youth setup as well, and he decided to leave Southampton and go to Chelsea. And then I kind of spoke to him and said, look, I'm going to be leaving Southampton. I'm looking at other opportunities. And the guy from Chelsea called me up and said, yeah, we'd love to have you in here. We're looking at bringing through young players. We've got no money. We need to try and qualify for the Champions League. Would you be interested? So I got my contract paid up at Southampton, and went there for the last few months of the season. Lived in the hotel at Stamford Bridge, and I got to train with the likes of Zola, Desai, Hasselbank, John Terry, Frank Lampard. So again, it was an incredible experience, and went away that summer to the Toulon tournament with England under-20s, and the 2.5 weeks were out. I thought I was coming back to sign the contract at Chelsea, and Abramovich had bought the club. They'd already signed Veron, Joe Cole, Crespo. I thought, well, if I couldn't get into Saints side, there's no chance I'm getting in this. So
Yeah.
it was a phone call to the agent and said, look, what other opportunities are there for me?
Yeah. And then obviously came along the move to Swindon. I mean, as a player, do you think those were your formative years sort of at Swindon?
I mean, you always learn off all the players like I just spoke about, but it's playing first team football that you want to be involved in. And my at the time just taking Sam Parkin from Chelsea to Swindon. I said, look, I'm in at Swindon. They quite like you. Would you like to come and have a look? So I went in there for 2 days and thought we got a good chance of getting promotion. and signed there, and absolutely loved my time there.
Yeah, and it sort of says in your career on Wiki that that you moved to the wing in your second year at Swindon. I mean, what was that like, having been used to a more central role?
No, I was actually, bought as kind of a wide winger, and then like a number
Right.
10. So I played wide left for the first season at Swindon, and then we lost a couple of players. We were struggling financially. We used to get paid by check, and I spoke to the gaffer and said, "Look, I want to play central midfield."
Mm.
And he moved me in there, and that kind of then kicked on into being a central midfield player.
Yeah, and this obviously alerted a couple of clubs. Your foreman. How did you come about signing for Barnsley then?
Again, like I said, we used to get paid by check by Swindon. It was always late. We were struggling for money, and when we didn't go up, they said that we can't afford to offer contracts to people of what they're earning. And I kind of saw all the boys leaving, and thought, I don't really think this is the future for me. I want to get out of this league. I want to play in the Championship. I want to go to a club that's progressive. And so I got a phone call from Andy, the gaffer at the time, Andy Ritchie and Rick Holden. Went up and met them, saw the stadium. In England's youth setup, I already knew of Paul Reed. Neil Austin was my roommate for a bit, and Anthony Kay. So I spoke to those boys, and they said, "Yeah, look, we're building a young squad. We've got a good chance of promotion next year." So went up there and thought, yeah, this is a challenge I really, really fancy.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about Neil Austin and Anthony Kay. I mean, I think there was still a drinking culture that was sort of prevalent around football at that time. I mean, what was it like as a young lad in Yorkshire?
Yeah, it was great. I think obviously you can't really do what we maybe did back then. We probably went out a bit too much, but it was a team spirit we had. We had such a young team. Nearly all the lads were under 24. Done everything together. We trained together, worked hard together, and then we done a lot of stuff off the field, golf, and a few nights out in bonding sessions. So I think it really helped with that squad.
Yeah. Do you want to ask about sort of the playoff campaign then, Will?
Yeah, I mean, you obviously, like you said, you moved to that Barnsley side, knowing you had a decent set of lads, and that promotion might have been a goal. At what stage of the season was it where you thought, actually, we're really on something here, and promotion was like a real objective?
Probably from February onward, we're in the mix here. We've got a great opportunity. Let's actually knuckle down, get our heads down, work hard. We've got an opportunity to get promoted here. And like I said, we just had a confidence and a team spirit that went out there and managed to get the job done. And I think we got beat 1-0 by Huddersfield in the first game, and the gaffer went absolutely ballistic at us, and we had a meeting between us and said, look, that ain't good enough. We've come this far to chuck it away now. And I think that the second leg we were outstanding, well worthy winners at the time, and then we went down to Cardiff, and we were fully confident that we were going to get the job done.
Yeah, I mean, what was that game like? Because I mean, by all accounts, going into that game, Swansea were firm favourites, and they had the likes of Lee Trundle playing for them at the time, who was regarded as one of the top prospects outside of the top division. So I think it'd be fair to say we scraped through that final. I would say I'm wrong in that.
I don't know. I thought we started the game really well. Obviously, went 1-0 up, and we were always well in the game. I think I come off injured. A couple of other people will come off. So when it went to penalties, I think 3 of the penalty takers actually come off. So I think that was probably the only time that I felt a bit nervous, thinking we practiced penalties in the build up to the game, and 3 of your 5 penalty takers are now on the bench. But every single one that stepped up were class pens, and obviously Nicky Colgan was great in nets.
Yeah, and then it was a championship season for the Reds, and I think if you ask most Barnsley fans of the memories of that first year in the Championship, a game that springs to mind would be the Barnsley versus Leeds game. I think we won the game 3-2, and it was live on ITV. I mean, what were your memories like of that first season back in the Championship?
I'd worked hard to get into the Championship. Always felt I was more than comfortable to play there. So I remember before the first game at Cardiff, do you think you're ready to step up? Do you think you can do it? And then went out and probably scored the best goal of my career. I thought, I'll let my feet do the talking. And then, like I said, that Leeds game is probably one of my favourite games in my career because my brother's a Leeds fan. And they came up the night before and they stayed. And in the morning, they would give me a saying, "You can't beat us." And like I said, a topsy-turvy game being 2-1 down, get it back to 2-2, and then swinging one in with my right foot, sliding on my knees in front of my brother and his mate, and their heads were in their hands, and then from being on the floor and looking around me, all the boys were on top of me, and then seeing Reebok Classics and trainers all around me, all the fans running on the pitch, and just incredible memories.
Yeah, and then we've got to ask you about this, but we'll sort of start off at the start of the 07-08 season. What was Simon Davey like as a manager for you?
It was a difficult start because he came in and dropped me the first game. Didn't give me a reason why, wouldn't tell me why. Just said, "Look, I'll pick this team." And I remember sat on the bench. It was 0-0 at home to Ipswich at the time, and he made a couple of subs, and then I warmed up, and the fans were obviously singing my name, wanted me on the pitch, and he turned around and said, "You brought a lot of family here today, then, haven't you?" And I turned around and said something like, "No, people here just not a good player." He then deliberately made another sub. I was on the bench, and then Grant McCann, who came in and took my place, scored a 94th minute winner, and I just sort of sat there and thought, "Me done here. This is me done at the club." Got off to this shocking start. Players that taken my place have scored the winner. But lucky for me, Grant got injured while scoring the winner. I went in next day, trained like an absolute madman. He started, and I scored after about 20 minutes, and we kind of just grew from there. Really, he knew how hard I worked and how I wanted to train. And then, within a few months, I was captain for him. So it was a crazy turnaround. If you asked me that after the first game that I'll be captain of the club in a few months' time, I'd have thought you're taking a piss.
Yeah. And I'll probably Will ask this, but that FA Cup run. The first question I want to ask you is, does it slightly frustrate you at times that sometimes your career is defined by one game or two games?
Not really. I'd rather be remembered for something good than a few hundred games, whatever. You're okay. I like it that people say, "God, that's some memory," and it's such a famous goal and a famous game. Wherever I go now, people always ask me about it, and even the little things like the end of clips on TV with Matt Letizia doing the commentary on the game on Sky, and obviously he watched me grow up as a kid, so everything kind of fell into place perfectly that day.
Yeah, and I've got to ask. Start of that cup run. We beat Blackpool, I think it was, and then in the fourth round, I can't even remember who we played, but a Liverpool game.
Wait.
Do you remember? Sorry.
Jamal Campbell-Rice scored an absolute worldie, 1-0.
Yeah. And so the Liverpool game at Anfield. Can you sort of tell us what was going through your head? It's sort of like half an hour intervals because we went 1-0 down, and then Stephen Foster scored an equaliser at 1-1. How were the team feeling?
I think we said before the game, look, just don't chuck it away in the first half, stay in the game. And defended our lives. Probably could have been 3 or 4 down, but you get in at half time and you're only 1-0 down. You kind of go, let's give it a go. 45 minutes, let's just smash it and see how it goes. And like I said, Davey's whipped in a great ball, brilliant header from Fozzie. And you go, actually, we got a chance. Again, we still rode our luck at times. Obviously, Steely was unbelievable. Bobby Hassel and Rob Coslick, remember chucking their bodies on the line. And as the game goes on, you think we'll get one more chance. We'll get one more. It should have been a blatant penalty. Even when people show me that goal back now and go and watch the build up and go, how is he not giving that penalty? But luckily, because I was irate and I chased him 20 yards down the pitch, I was in a position to pick the ball up and I managed to kind of go around Chevy Longzo and find the bottom corner.
When you say it like that, just casually take it round Xabi Alonso, put it in the bottom corner in front of the Kop. It sounds pretty good, doesn't it?
Yeah, but like he got removed to Real Madrid and then I end up at Sheffield, so something went wrong somewhere.
Yeah, but yeah, what was that Liverpool team like? Do you remember sort of that battle with Alonso in the middle of the park?
Yeah, him and Lucas Leiva started in the centre of the park. So you think I'm playing against two international players straight away. This is going to be a tough game. I need to be up for it. I just relished it, loved the challenge, and then they just bring on this other player called Steven Gerrard, and you think, oh, this ain't getting any easier. And but again, you just think like these are some of the best players in the world. I want to prove myself. Similar to what I said before, I trained with those kind of players growing up, so I've always fancied that I can have a good go against these, and lucky that day that on top.
Yeah, and you were named in the FA Cup team the round, not surprisingly, and then came along a certain Chelsea side who'd won the league 2 years previous to that, and were in a Champions League final that year. I mean, what was that like?
Again, at that point, you're just relishing it, and we've gone and rode our luck at Anfield, but we thought, right, at home at Oakwell, under the lights, they're not going to fancy coming here if we get after them after the first minute. Let's see what. And I thought, we did ride our luck at Anfield, and like I said, maybe did scrape through that one to beat Chelsea. We had other opportunities. I don't think they had any clear-cut chances, and I thought the boys were absolutely fantastic, every single one of them.
I mean, there's obviously when it was Kaedo Odejayi who obviously eventually got the goal. What that moment when he scored, that must just have been unreal as a player. Sort of the fans literally went mental.
Yeah. In front of the Ponty end, the whole place erupted. It was incredible.
There was probably was about half an hour to go still. It must be hard to sort of keep your head in that moment and think, well, now we've got to hold on to this, for remainder of the match.
I think it changes, like I said before. We got after them after the first minute, and when you're pushing and trying to get that goal, you get that goal with half an hour to go, and you think, "Oh, we could do this again here. We're half an hour for Wembley." Mm-hmm. The game, the mindset does change, and you do think, right, we do need to defend. We do need to not be so gung ho, and can't have too many players too far up the pitch. And like I said, I think the boys done a fantastic job, and we managed to keep them out.
Yeah, and obviously you're into the semi-final of the FA Cup, and that Cardiff game. I remember it clear as day, even if I was very young. It could have gone so differently that day, and I'd argue we were probably better than Cardiff on the day. What is it like, firstly, to be the captain of a side in an FA Cup semi-final and leading your team out at Wembley?
I think people ask about the magic of the cup. Myself growing up, the FA Cup was huge. It was FA Cup final day every year. Lived away from a park, we would all be out on the pitch playing, thinking, getting ready for the cup final. Go in, watch the cup final, and then you're back out on the grass, and whoever scored the winning goal, you're scoring goals. You were him. So FA Cup was always huge for me growing up. So, growing up saying if I could captain my team, my club at Wembley, it's kind of a dream come true moment.
Yeah, and that game, we were so unlucky to lose that game. If Odejayi slots that chance, I'd argue we get to an FA Cup final, and then where do you go from there? But being in the PFA Championship team the year that year is still being at Barnsley. Do you think that's sort of what fueled your wish, I'd say, to get to the Premier League?
Yeah, I think it's probably the proudest moment of my career because it's voted for by the fellow players, and players can be hard and harsh at times on other players. Everyone thinks they're better than each other, so to get that credit and be recognised by your fellow pros and your peers, then I think from that there was a lot of interest in me that summer. But I think with that on the top of the other bits, the price got too heavy. And obviously we couldn't agree a new contract at the time, or wasn't offered one. It became a difficult moment after that.
Yeah, I mean, this is something I really wanted to ask you. Like, was the famous Patrick Crine quote, "If Michael Tong's worth 3 million, then Brian Howard's worth 10." Do you think that hindered you in either A, getting a new contract, pay me as a £10 million player would be paid, or B, sell me? I mean, do you think that hindered your chances of making a move to the Premiership?
I think so. Yeah, there was definitely clubs interested at, kind of 4 million. Then you kind of get a £10 million price tag put in your head. I remember I didn't see it. I was on holiday, and I remember getting a phone call from someone saying, "Have you seen this quote?" And it's like, "Wow, where's that come from?"
Yeah.
So you kind of say, "Look, well, if I'm valued at that, this contract here." There was a couple of other players that got offered new deals, so I said, "Where's my new deal?" And then got silly because it said, "Well, will you sign it?" I said, "Well, it depends what you offer me. Well, we're not going to offer you one unless you sign it." And I said, "Well, if you value me at 10 million, then my £10 million player's contract. So unless it is that, we're offering."
Yeah.
And it just became a situation that it didn't need to happen.
Yeah, and I mean, do you think some Barnsley fans weren't told the entire truth about that? Because I mean, sadly, there was quite a fair amount of bitterness at the time when you did move to Sheffield United.
I completely understand it. It's a local rivals. It's the kind of hatred between the clubs, but full story was never allowed to come out. I had to sign a disclaimer to say I couldn't talk about it at the time, so I was never allowed to say my piece. Went in, but they said it can't go through until the following week, and I was still made to go to the game on the Saturday, and so leaked it to the press and to the websites and the fans zones and the bits that I had in a transfer request, and said I'm only going. So I remember it now. We were at home to Norwich, and the abuse and that I got from the fans. It was like, some what they want you. Definitely not the truth, but I had to suck it up and take it on board and deal with it because I had to look after my career.
Yeah, yeah, and obviously complete the move to Sheffield United, and this is probably an entirely different subsection in terms of the managers that you played under. One manager that I'm really interested in asking you about is, what is Kevin Blackwell like?
Obviously, if you've listened to the Under the Coshes, then you know what a lot of people think. I got on okay with Blackie. I found him all right. We never really fell out. Never really, Reading came in for me. He was good as gold. We said, "Look, I don't want to lose you, but I understand it's, club, and you can move back down south and probably get a better contract." And he said, "So it's up to you." And kind of all those things happened. So I got on fine with him. There was probably the instance, I don't know if I've said the story on other things, but I asked him what he wanted for me as a number 10. Obviously, we did play a bit of long ball, and I wasn't really getting on the ball. I was playing, and we were doing well, and the team were flying, but I wasn't kind of dominating games like I did before at previous clubs in the centre of the park. And he pulled me in and said, "Well, how are you 25 years old and don't know number 10?" I said, "Well, I've always played central mid, but I was only asking the question." And he said, "You're not centre mid, you're number 10. All the goals you've been scoring, you must be number 10." And pulled out all the scouting sheets, and everyone was like, "Centre mid, centre mid, centre mid, centre mid." I apologise. And I said, "Okay, like, no problem." I was only, kind of getting to the bottom of it. We went out and trained. He'd done team shape. He went 4-4-2, and I was on the bench, so it probably didn't work out great.
When you were at Sheffield United, obviously you went on another playoff campaign. How or did that differ to when you were at Barnsley? With the squad, was it that similar kind of whole team getting together, or was that slightly different? Obviously, being at a slightly higher level.
Because what you had then at that time was, you had Gary Speeds, Ugo Ekiog, Sunji Highs, James Beattie's, kind of all players that played in the Premier League that are, older in their. Then a group of kind of mid-20s of myself, Billy Sharp, Matty Kilgallen, that group, and then you had obviously Carl Norton and Carl Walker in there, like two young lads. So wasn't really a squad and done everything together because everyone had different situations in their life, but still everyone got on great. There was a different feel to it, but you looked around it, and I mentioned some of the names there, the quality that was there, that, you know, it was criminal really that we didn't go up that year.
Yeah, and then you moved to Reading, and could you tell from when you signed at Reading that this was a side that, you know, I mean, I know they got promoted, you know, a season after, but could you tell that there was the groundwork there for a side that could dominate in the Championship?
One of the reasons I wanted to go, obviously I wasn't desperate to leave Sheffield United. You know, I was playing every week there, and then, you know, me a call, and I do want to play as an attacking midfielder. We're going to play a certain brand of football, which you see Brendan's teams do now.
Yeah.
And he just excited me. Just be different to what I'm kind of in now. I went down there and absolutely loved it. You know, best coach I've worked under, Brendan. Like, absolutely fantastic person, brilliant coach. Just enjoyed every day. And it was just really unlucky that, I think after about 5 or 6 games, maybe, that I was there playing for him, I broke my jaw, so I was out for a bit, and in that time the team didn't do great, and sadly he lost his job, and you know, I was gutted really, because by the time I come back, you know, it was kind of a change to the style and a change to the team. Again, the players we had in that squad were fantastic really. You start looking at Gylfi Sigurdssons, people like that, just class players, Ryan Bertrands, and there were loads of lads that have gone on and had played Premier League careers.
And how come you don't think it really worked out at Reading? Do you think that jaw injury really halted your progression at the club?
I think the change in management, those were a similar one with Simon Davey, that I won him over and ended up captaining him for a bit, and then for whatever reason he changed a couple of bits, and, you know, I found myself playing as much as I wanted to be playing, and, you know, I used to take that difficult, and, you know, I wanted to play. I was never being around, sat on the bench, being a, you know, squad player. I was there to play. I'm in my mid-20s. I'm in my prime, and, you know, I was, you know, training really hard every day. I was, you know, one of the best players every day in training. You know, all the other players, you know, it's like you used to come up and say, "Oh, you're not playing." Well, I remember we signed Benny Afobe on loan, and Benny said, "Oh, have you been injured?" I said, "No." And he said, "You suspended?" I said, "No." He goes, "How are you not playing? You're the best player here." And I said, "Well, go and ask him, because he's picking the team." And then when we did have a serious falling out after one game, and I think once that happened, there was no way back.
Then Reading obviously lose the playoff final with you as an unused sub, and then the season after you had a couple of loan moves. I mean, I'm really interested to ask you about your time at Portsmouth. I mean, it was a dark time for the club, but what was it like being the captain of a club in a situation like that?
It was tough. It was a tough year really, because I loved it at Reading. I enjoyed being there, everything like that. But, you know, again, I wasn't getting the game time, and, you know, Millwall came and loaned for me, and, you know, the gaffer pulled me in and said, "Look, you're next one off the bench. You'll be in the team, but if you want to go play football, I won't stand in your way." And I was like, "No, I'm going." Went to Millwall. Karachan kind of came in, took my place on the bench, then got in, and they went on a brilliant run. And I thought, oh, it could have been me, but I went alone to Millwall and played particularly well, done well. But my dad fell ill at the time, and I wanted to be home. So, yeah, I'm kind of really in my life, and I kind of took my mind off football, because I just wanted to be around, spend as much time as I could with my dad. He then sadly passed away that summer, and there was a few offers on the table, and Portsmouth, you know, they trained in Eastleigh, which is where my mum lives. Everything like that just fit. You know, they were promised they were getting bought out. I spoke to Michael Appleton. He said, "Look, we're going to get bought out. I want you to be my captain, and I'll build a team around you. We're going to get back-to-back promotions, blah, blah, blah." I thought, yeah, massive club, Portsmouth. Fans are brilliant. Every time I played there, loved it. Took the chance, and then the investment never come. Behind the scenes, the club was falling apart. You know, we had players turning up on a Friday that never met anyone. We had two players turn up on a Saturday before a game, hour and a half before a game, introducing themselves and then starting on that day. It was, you know, players were coming and going. It was a real tough time for everyone.
Yeah, and yeah, it sounds awful, and And what was your thinking process like playing there? Because I'm sure it's so hard to concentrate on a game whilst you know that there's a chance your wages might not be paid and that the club may be even going bust.
I think I just try to keep it professional. You just stuff that you can't control really. So you just got to make sure you're training right every day, you're living right, you're working hard, you're doing what you can on a match day. But then it's kind of getting up to January time, and everyone's contracts were up, and they couldn't afford to give everyone the contracts they were on. I had a double hernia at the time, which I was struggling to play with, but they were saying you've got to play because we're paying contracts. You've got to play because we need you. And I was doing myself no favours, the club no favours really, because I wasn't fit enough to play. And as soon as they said, look, we can't renew your contract, we can't afford to do it, I had to get the operation done straight away because I knew I'll be moving in January.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
sorry, Edgar.
I was going to say, so after you spell at Portsmouth, you had a short spell at Bristol City. What was that like?
Again, it's another difficult one because I just had this double hernia operation. So, I went in there and look, obviously need to build my fitness up and get right. And the gaffer said, yeah, look, come on, just, work hard and you're going to come in, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. And it was a struggling team. It shouldn't have been because the squad, again, was some really good players in it. I just struggled to ever get fully fit really and challenge for a first team starting spot every week. And, sadly we went down and, it was a similar one where, getting halved and people being released and that because obviously you go down the division financially, you can't afford to keep people. So obviously left there then, and then you kind of going, right, crossroads in my career really, where do I go from here? And I just fancied the change and wanted to try something new.
Yeah, I mean, you say something new, you obviously ended up going to CSKA Sofia in Bulgaria, which is, slightly different to Portsmouth and Bristol City.
Yeah.
So obviously you said you fancied a change. Was that, by a change, did you always mean, going international, moving elsewhere?
Yeah, I always fancied playing abroad. I had two opportunities to go to America at the same time and got offered, at my agent at the time phoned me up and said, look, come to London, got this meeting, and went and met the Bulgarian chairman, and then there was an English guy had bought the club. So went for dinner with them in London. They said, look, we want to get this club back into Europe. These are the players we're going to be signing, kind of Martin Petrov, Mama Sidabi, yourself, plus the young internationals and the players they had there then. I went out to Sofia, had a couple of days there, lovely city, amazing place. And I just fancied, I thought this is exciting.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably my only chance now really at this stage of my career at 30 years old to go in Europe. But again, financially, the club after properly, we weren't getting paid properly. I had people knocking my door in my apartment because the rent wasn't paid and the bills weren't paid, which was part of my contract. It's never in my contract, so I paid it. So it was difficult times again, and you go, right, I need to come back to England, and managed to get the opportunity at Birmingham.
Yeah, I mean, while you're actually playing in Bulgaria, how much does that differ to sort of the English leagues in terms of not just quality, but sort of a whole experience of a player? The fans out there are known for being sort of quite ultra.
Yeah.
Sort of, what was it like?
So, off with, the fans are absolutely crazy. I love stuff like that and gets you going for a game. Fireworks getting thrown on the pitch, and it was just real interesting experience. And some of the games were weird though. You'd play kind of Levski and you'd play Ludogorets and the top teams, and it would be like a top champ, fixture. It would be a real tough game, and then you play some of the teams at the bottom and they haven't been paid their money, so some of their players weren't turning up. And I played right back in one game, we won 7-0. So some of the quality there wasn't there.
So then, sort of the back end of your career, you had a spell at Birmingham City, Oxford United, and then in the conference with Eastleigh and some other lower league clubs. What was that sort of like?
So Birmingham started off great. I think I got man of the match from Davey, who then scored against Derby in the next game. I loved being back, and then I broke my toes in the Derby game. So a few weeks out sorting them. And then the gaffer said, look, you just play in the 23s, have 60 minutes just to get fit because you'll play at the weekend. And a couple of boys got injured, so I had to play the full game, and it was a cup game, went to extra time. I nicked the ball past someone, and where the team we were playing were tired, smashed my ankle, and then again that was me done. I was out injured, so difficult time again, and then you get to the summer, and then you're looking at another club again.
Yeah, and what is it like as a footballer when you get to that sort of crossroads at the sort of the back end of your career? What is it like to have to accept that you're no longer a professional footballer?
It's tough. I found I went from Birmingham to Oxford pretty much because I just wanted to stay down south again, and Michael Appleton, who was my manager at Birmingham, at Portsmouth, as was manager, and said, look, I want you to bring you in, want some experience, want some quality, and in League Two, and I just really struggled with it. And I felt myself becoming that old bitter pro in the dressing room, and thought this isn't right. And come to an agreement that I'd go to my hometown club. They were doing really well. I thought if I could just finish by getting my hometown club promoted, if we get promoted, I have one more year. I want to try that. And then obviously we lost in the play. And I just remember being on the bus on the way home from Grimsby, in Chips, just thinking, yeah, this is me done. I've had enough, and I went to Eastleigh. We only trained 3 days a week, so started to meet young players, start to go to different games, and get involved in the agency side. I learned about it a lot, and just thought, I'm going to get a head start on my transition and retire earlier than probably what I should have, and go into that. So yeah, it was probably the best decision I made.
Yeah, and what is it? How did someone get into the football intermediary sort of business? Because it's something that's been, let's say it's been glamorized by the likes of your super agents these days. Your Mino Raiola's. What is it like trying to get into that business?
It's tough. It's really tough industry. Like I said, everyone looks at it and thinks, oh, I can be an agent, I can work in football, it's really fun, you can earn lots of money. But the reality is that you've got to be good at it. You've got to have contacts. You've got to be, it's literally 24/7. Well, it goes to so many games, so many travelling. Build up your contacts. You've got to then sign clients. You've got to look after them so they don't leave you. You obviously got to put up with other agents and trying to nick your clients. It's a tough industry.
Yeah.
You talk about trying to change the stereotype around football agents. How do you try and go about doing that?
Trying to be a good person, really, and do the job right. Put the players first. I mean, I had a few different agents in my career, and learned a lot from them. But what you see is some of these, maybe the super agents, and some of the others, they'll see a young player or see a player and think, well, I see pound notes. There's a move there. I can move him, and I can do this, and I can do that. Where really, for me, I want what's best for the player. I don't want to move him somewhere where he's going to be unhappy or not in the team and not playing just for my own financial gains. I want players to be happy and be spurred on, and just try and be, like you said, do everything above board and be a good person.
Yeah. So in a sort of everyday transfer, what is sort of your role, like step by step of your involvement with that?
You'll be speaking to clubs, any interested parties. The player will be sold, whether the club will sell him, whether a player's been released. So you've got to have all the information possible, and then you've got to speak to all the clubs that are potentially interested to see what they're going to offer, see what the plans and the pathways are for the player, and just give the client as much kind of real-time info as possible.
Yeah, and it's something that's not really talked about a lot, but what clubs would you say are best to deal with?
It's a difficult one, really. We deal with quite a lot.
I'm conscious that you probably can't say these clubs are terrible.
I think we're stronger with some clubs than others. you know, I don't think we've ever really fallen out of any clubs. I think, as I said before, we try and do everything above board, make sure we do everything right. So yeah, nearly all of them are great to deal with. I've had no real issues, touch wood.
Yeah.
In 2015, football agency was deregulated. Do you think that's a positive move?
Needs to be regulated. There's so many problems now with young players going with people maybe they shouldn't do, because these guys might have some money behind them or something, and see that there is money to be made in football, and players properly. So for me, you do need some sort of regulation on it to make sure for the players' protection.
Yeah, and I think this is probably one of my last questions that I want to ask you is players who you and Phil represent. Is it sort of a process of over time you gain their trust, or will you sign them down to contracts for you to represent them?
Down to contracts, so an agent's rep contract is for 2 years. So you have them for 2 years, and you look after that player and do the contracts, and then 2 years, hopefully they re-sign. And we've just had a few boys out of contracts now, and they've all re-signed. We've managed to sign a few new ones, so we're doing okay at the moment. And normally, when boys are signed, they're happy to re-sign and stay with you.
Yeah, and well, firstly, I'd like to say thank you for coming on, but I think we've sort of got through everything. And there's one final question that I'd like to ask you is, how would you like to be remembered?
As a player or as a person?
Sort of both, sort of a fusion of the pair.
As a player, probably someone that always worked hard, always wanted to win. And entertain, as well as being a winner. So probably that. I think just as a person, especially moving into this side, just an honest guy who works with integrity and just always wants to work hard and do the best I possibly can to help as many people as I can.
Yeah, and well, like I said, you've really helped us by coming on this podcast, so thank you very much.
That's great.
Yeah, thanks very much.
If you've enjoyed the podcast, please do drop it a like on YouTube, or if you're listening on Apple, please drop us a 5-star review. We'd really appreciate that. As always, you can find us on Twitter @FloodlightPod, and thank you for listening.
Thanks, guys.